how tough it is to perform at the level you got to be at. But I have a lot of respect for him and what he's achieved already in his Formula One career and so on. And I'm sure it's not over for him. I'm sure there's a plan B for next year. So.
Now, one of the hottest topics recently was the offer that Norris received from Red Bull on 2 occasions. With Norris becoming a McLaren superstar and being able to completely destroy Ricciardo in the same machinery, one has to wonder what would have happened if the young Brit had been able to drive in a car like Red Bull. Obviously, he would have had a much bigger challenge in Verstappen compared to Ricciardo, but that doesn't mean that Norris isn't capable of overcoming it. So, what did Norris miss in his career? And should he regret not taking the chance to drive for Red Bull? Norris joined McLaren in 2019, and it was evident that he was going to be a superstar ever since he joined the team. Obviously, his first season with the team wasn't as planned, but in 2020, Norris was able to lead the team to 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship. It helped the Woking-based team a lot that Ferrari was out of competition with a penalty imposed for fraud they committed in 2019. But nevertheless, the team was able to beat the illegal version of Mercedes that Racing Point drove and Alpine, a team that they lost the battle to in 2022. In 2021, Norris got a new teammate in Ricciardo, and it was quite evident that he would have a huge challenge to keep up with Ricciardo prior to the signing. After all, Ricciardo has won 7 races with Red Bull and came from a season where he finished in P5 with Renault in 2020, which wasn't a small thing to do. Ricciardo wasn't able to understand the principles of the Woking-based car, which eventually saw him lose his job after 2 years at McLaren. However, Norris was able to absolutely drive the wheels off the underperforming McLaren, which is why he was praised for his ability to adapt to anything that's given to him. Even though McLaren finished 3rd in 2020, it's clear that they're in decline right now, and their pace in 2022 is one clear indicator of that. Norris, for one, isn't happy with how the car has performed recently, and this is something that's been ongoing for a couple of years, at least according to the young Brit. When talking about the pace in 2022 and what the car lacks the most, Norris added, "It's just our car, the characteristics of the car. The things we struggled with, the car doesn't have enough front. For me, all I need is front. I don't need rear tyres, but when I have front, we can be quick. As soon as we destroy the front tyres, we were seconds off or half a second or a second off. So it's just the characteristics the car relies on too much. But we all know this, we've known it, it's just been something we've had for years sadly, and it's our job to get rid of that for next season." It's evident that Norris isn't happy with the performance of the MCL 36. However, it seems like the struggles will continue in 2023 as well. This is something Norris believes, and he believes that competitiveness will return to the Woking-based team in 2024. That's when they won't have any excuses left, and if they're as bad a team in 2024 and 2025, then it's solely their fault. Norris received a couple of invitations from Red Bull, with the first one dating prior to him signing a deal with McLaren in 2019. Obviously, Norris was related to McLaren in his F2 days, but there wasn't any place for him in 2018 because Alonso and Van Dorn drove the car at that point. Red Bull was seeking a replacement for Hartley in Toro Rosso, and that replacement was found in Alex Albon. In 2019, Pierre Gasly was promoted to the senior team of Red Bull, which went down as one of the worst promotions ever in F1, lasting only 13 races, or more precisely, the first half of the season. Gasly was then replaced by Albon, and if the team hadn't signed Albon in Toro Rosso as a replacement for Hartley, but instead opted for Norris, then Norris would have been the guy to replace Gasly in Red Bull in 2019. Now, before we move on, we wanted to tell you about the amazing deal the official F1 store is doing right now. Holiday season is here, and they're doing daily discounts on all orders. So check out the first link down in the description to get yourself this juicy discount. The second offer that was made to Norris was around 2021, when Norris decided to extend his contract in McLaren until 2025. However, this offer was something like a talk between Norris and Red Bull, as the Brit said that it was nothing but a casual talk between him and the Austrian team. He also added that he spoke to multiple teams, and as of now, he's happy with McLaren, although he could be much happier as we speak. Now, when talking about the talk that he had with Red Bull and a potential joining of forces with Verstappen, Norris added, "It's more just I was coming to the end of my contract, and it wasn't like Red Bull and I were talking heavily. I literally said it was just everyone always tries to speak to all teams at some point, so I spoke to them. I spoke to a few other people. A chat's a chat, it's not like me. What can we do straight away? Just keeping in touch, things like that. It's as simple as that sometimes. I've always been happy with McLaren. As much as I could be happier, I've always been happy. Before I ever spoken to anyone else, my talks have always been with McLaren first. That's always how it goes. As much as sometimes you might like what could happen, the best thing for me is signing the contract that I have now, just having that confidence that you're going to be in F1 and the knowledge that you're going to be in F1 for 3, 4, 5 years. But the question needs to be asked. What if Norris accepted this role? Obviously, many believe that he would have been an instant championship candidate, something that Verstappen has worked hard for 6 years to achieve in his career. But Norris would have come from a team that had a very good performing car in previous seasons, and while they are in decline, that doesn't take away from the fact that Norris knows how to win races. After all, he did win the pole position in Russia, and the rain interfered with his fate when it came to winning the first race of the season. If Norris had joined Verstappen, we would have seen a fight similar to what we saw in Mercedes in 2016 or McLaren in 2007. Norris would have been much more competitive with Verstappen than the Dutchman is used up to until this point by his teammates. However, the question would have been asked, would the team have allowed them to race equally? We've seen what happened when Perez tried to bark back at Verstappen and show some strength. He was immediately shown his position and was reminded of his duties as a number 2 driver. One thing is for sure, Norris would have absolutely destroyed the competition in Red Bull, at least everyone but Verstappen. The Brit has said multiple times throughout his career that he enjoys driving cars that are a bit more stable in the corners, something that the MCL 36 is not currently achieving. On the other hand, the RB18 is a car that has been known for being stable in the corners and on its exit, which is why Ricciardo has had a hard time adapting to the McLaren car for 2 straight years. And Norris doesn't back away from challenges. In 2022, he's been the only driver apart from the top 3 teams that has stood on the podium, and we've seen that this season has been a one-man show for McLaren. Obviously, he would have emerged as a huge candidate to take the number 1 spot in Red Bull, and if the move was done much earlier, we're not 100% sure whether Verstappen would have been the Red Bull guy with 2 trophies under his belt. Still, with McLaren's incompetence with a 2022 season, which is likely to continue for at least one more season, one can't help but wonder what will happen with Norris beyond 2025. As he said, continuing the contract until 2025 was made with reason, as he gives the team 2 years in 2024 and 2025 to see what will happen with the performance of its car. If they don't manage to make a competitive car, one that could see him winning his first race of the season or possibly a championship, then we're likely going to see him on another team. In 2023, Norris will have a much more difficult challenge compared to Ricciardo, and that's overcoming the potential of Oscar Piastri. The young Aussie isn't going to back down from any challenge, and that's why we believe that the Brit will have a very interesting season ahead of him. So, what do you think about Norris's decision to stay at McLaren and not join forces with a top performing team? Do you think that his loyalty will pay off in 2024 or 2025? Let us know in the comments below.